Richard. How are you?
I'm doing great today, Randy. How about yourself?
Great. Got a ton of scores that I'm trying to pile through, and I know that you do too. You said you were, just doing some score study for an honor band you're doing this weekend, and that's a continued process for me as well. And I thought it would be kind of cool today to maybe talk a little bit about your process and what you do, and I'll share a little bit on my side of it too, because I know that everybody does it differently, but the most important thing is do it. Find the time to study your scores, and we can talk about why. And I think, for me, it's always been this idea of coming into a rehearsal and not having the anxiety, feeling like I'm learning the music with the students at that time. That, for me, is personally very anxiety ridden. So I like to make sure I'm prepared, and I have a process that I use that's very personal to me. I like to say that learning a score is kind of like getting to know a person. And so I know, as a composer yourself, I know you probably appreciate the amount of time that somebody spends, delving into the material that you wrote and trying to make it sound as good as possible. So let's talk about that this morning.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And I was not always great about doing that when I was teaching. I always thought like I didn't have enough time. And there were plenty of times that I learned music along with the kids, and that was never good. Because my kids were pretty smart, and they knew that I wasn't prepared. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I enjoy now about doing score study is when I get in front of a new group, especially with an honor band or an all-state band, and I have some of those coming up, and to be able to look down at the score and immediately find what I need to find without having to stare at the score, and be able to look right back up at the kids and keep my focus on them. To me, that's the big thing, doing honor bands, et cetera, is I don't have to constantly look down at that score and learn the music. I'm looking down at the markings that I have, reminding myself of anything from dynamics to entrances, of course, even an occasional harmonic analysis, if we're going to tune a chord or whatever. That just helps rehearsals flow so much better. Don't you agree?
Yes, it does make the process go smoother. And I think, when you're already feeling limited in rehearsal time, I mean, I don't think there's a person on the planet that feels like they have enough rehearsal time. At least by the time you get done with the rehearsal, you always go, oh, I wish I had another hour, right? So the more you're prepared as a conductor and as a rehearsal technician to help the students learn how their part fits, the better off we are. And I think too, the expectation of what that full ensemble rehearsal is, I've always kind of told my students that it's and even my community band, it's for the process of learning everyone else's part and how things fit together. It's not for the process of learning rhythms, notes, and things like that. And so if you have that expectation as a conductor, I think it makes that process a little bit easier. And I know sometimes when you get in your all-state, in your honor band conducting, sometimes something happens and the students don't have the music in advance. And so it makes it tougher, right, Richard? So that's when it really matters.
Yeah, if they're reading, you need to be there to help. And so if you're reading with them, that's tough. Yeah. And one of the things that I was always told in college is that, I don't know what you were told, but I was told you need to be able to sing through every part in the score. Well, I'm not so good at that. I'm studying Ron Nelson's Sonoran Desert Holiday right now, and I get about halfway through one of those parts and I can't even find the pitch because some of that stuff is so difficult. Yes. But it does remind you what the kids are going through, and so it really opens you up to their world a little bit.
It absolutely does. And, if you're going to get, which I'm sure you're doing right now, get to a point where you're saying, okay, in the Ron Nelson, what are the colors? What are the blends of the colors? What color is supposed to predominate here? What's the shape of this line? And I know, being a pianist, you're able to play those things on the piano. I do some of that on the piano, but I also play lines, like especially wind lines, on my trumpet to get a sense for what those feel like, so that we can get to that next level. Because if all we're doing is notes and rhythms, the audience isn't going to get to enjoy what the piece really is all about. So
Right. And on a piece like the Ron Nelson piece too, there are moments where, you know what he does. There'll be a million things going on, and then all of a sudden he'll have a double tongue piccolo part come right over the top of it that just sticks out over everything, you know. And I'm marking that in the score, saying somehow I have to get this out of the way, you know. But the thing is, you know about it ahead of time. That's the big thing.
And it does make a big difference. And so when we talk about the semantics of finding time to score study, I can tell you what I did, and that was that I basically dedicated an hour at school a day, and I would just go somewhere where nobody could find me. Sometimes that was the library, and I'm not talking the music library. Sometimes it was the music library. Sometimes it was the regular library or the media center. Sometimes it was a colleague's office, so that they couldn't find me. And trying to dedicate that time to get away from emails and phone calls and all that stuff, because that really is your job. That's what you were hired to do, is teach music. And the other time for me was either late at night when the family was asleep, or early in the morning when the family was asleep. Just having that time, 2 hours a day sequestered like that makes a huge difference. So that's
absolutely.
So moving forward, think about that as you begin to teach your festival music or your next concert. Think about the time that it takes to spend some time with those scores and really delve into what's going on, and listening to source material recordings and talking to colleagues about how they dealt with a difficult passage, or trying to troubleshoot those things so that you can help your students is a big part of your responsibility as a teacher and a conductor. So we hope you're out there doing that. You'll find time. And as long as you're answering those emails and return those phone calls within 24 hours, you're good, right, Richard?
Excuse me? You mean like one day? Within one day?
We'll say 24 to 72 hours.
Oh, now you're talking. Now you're talking.
Yeah, there we go. So have a great week, and continue to do the score study. It will make a huge difference in how you're feeling about your rehearsals out there. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next week again on another episode of Coffee Talk.
Take care, everybody.